One thing is sort of coming in with a new ambition for marketing, but in order for that ambition to actually materialize, you need others to believe in that potential. So getting the buy-in is absolutely essential, and I think that's a bigger task than just simply putting down your vision for the marketing department and sharing that at your next all hands meeting.
Welcome to Morning Brew for Marketing Executives, the podcast where senior B2B marketing leaders from globally recognized brands in complex industries share their stories and experiences. Here we dive into the world of marketing leadership and hear more about what it's like to be a marketing leader. Today, we're focusing on one of the toughest transformations in B2B, shifting a long-standing traditional hardware company into a data-driven software leader. From a marketing leader's perspective, there are a lot of things to share. That's why we are happy to welcome our guest, Asbjørn Severin, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Danelec. Asbjørn shares his journey from management consulting to an in-house leadership role and explains why cultural change is harder than any external recommendation. In this episode, you will also hear more about how to elevate a marketing function from a flyer factory to a strategic commercial engine, and how to rebrand marketing internally to secure critical stakeholder buy-in. This episode is hosted by Yanni Hovila, the managing director of Maven First, who has over a decade of experience working with marketing professionals in a complex sales environment. Let's get started.
Hello, Asbjørn. How are you doing today?
Hi, Yanni. I'm good. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. This episode, we will talk a little bit from the journey around how is to lead marketing in a company changing from hardware to software. You have interesting background in the agency world now, working in-house. Can you just give a quick glance to our listener? First of all, what's the company Danelec, all the changes around it, and of course your backstory, how you ended up from Ogilvy to actually be the director of marketing at Danelec.
Yes, absolutely. So maybe to start with myself, just briefly, as you say, I have a background in advertising and the agency world and in management consulting, and spent my first 8-10 years of my career in on the consulting side. And then a couple of years ago, I jumped ship and took a seat at the other side of the table at Danelec, where I'm heading up marketing and communications.
So Danelec as a company started as a reseller of other products early on, then developed their own hardware products, and now latest we kind of combine the hardware with software and all the I assume there's some artificial intelligence maybe, or some sort of smart things and whole data capturing there. So kind of transformative journey in that sense. But now almost 3 years in-house role, leading the function. How, Asbjørn, do you see what's easier than working as a consultancy side or in the agency side? Or is there anything easier?
I think actually on the contrary, I think you realize that change is harder than what you get to experience as a consultant. I've been through several journeys like the one we are in with Danelec, but on the consulting side. And, I think most consultants, and I don't think I'm offending anyone saying, most consultants would like for their clients to be able to work a little bit faster, myself included. As a consultant, I was always, we are, and that's the job of a consultant, is to sort of see if we can push things forward and make sure we deliver some proper progress, right? But sitting on the other side of the table, you actually have to deal with the cultural change, and you have to not only on a strategic level, think the change, but you actually have to walk the talk, and that's harder than simply delivering your recommendation.
On the topic, what surprised you the most, other than that?
honestly, sticking to the topic, I think I was surprised, sort of the pace. There's a big
Yep.
change in changing seats from consulting to taking a role in house. Things move quite a bit slower than what you would be used to from a consulting point of view. But I think that's also the beauty of diving in and actually the intention from my side taking an in-house role was to actually dive into to the hard and nitty-gritty stuff. Not only delivering a recommendation, but actually taking that all the way through. And now I'm 2.5 years in, and sure we've done a lot of progress, but we also have a long way to go. And but I think ultimately I think the big sort of benefit of the in-house role is you actually get to deliver a result, and to me that's super motivating.
Talking about the result, very, very traditional industry, if I think the maritime industry as a general, and of course the hardware side of that. What was the mandate for your hire? What was you hired to do at Danelec?
Well, actually, if we're to take a step back and just do sort of the brief story, as mentioned, I've been through a couple of these transformations earlier as a consultant. So I used to run an agency called Plateau Agency with two great partners, and what we agreed upon, me and my two partners back then, was the vast potential in sort of getting the full potential of marketing, especially looking at B2B technology companies within sort of this private equity space. So actually, we managed to go through a couple of these large transformations. And as part of that, the companies we were working with was obviously owned by private equities, and some of them were owned by Verdane, so the Norwegian private equity firm that ended up acquiring Danelec. So that was actually my way in, and how I was introduced to our CEO at Danelec. So the initial discussions was actually taking outset in what we were doing for some of our clients back then. And we kept in contact for a few years, Kasper, our CEO, and myself, before this actually happened. So quite a bit of a warm up, but I think what was clear when I joined Danelec was, we were at a place where we got a new ownership structure with Verdane as an owner. The Norwegian acquisition Kaima had fallen into place, and we were sort of looking ahead and looking into a proper growth journey. And I think the big change for Danelec now and over the past few years is really changing the perception in the market from being this very hardware centric production company. You could if you really want to take it all the way, that essentially we used to be a production company delivering our hardware through our sales and service partners, where with the acquisition of Kaima, adding sort of the rest of the data on the vessel to our data capturing capabilities, that sort of changed our position in the market, and we really needed to reposition Danelec essentially to make that change happen. Because one thing is acquiring a company and acquiring a set of capabilities. Another thing is actually taking that position in the market, right? So I think this is where it started, and where the conversations started, trying to figure out how do we actually change that perception in the market.
So, in very essence, Danelec has a very ambitious growth goals, and of course, from the owner's side, you were hard to. I like the full potential. We use that quite often as well. in what we are helping our clients to do, to how to find the full potential for the marketing function. So in essence, you were hired to support that growth, ambitious growth goals, and making sure we kind of tackle on the marketing full potential in there. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, easy job. Easy job.
Hey.
Oh, that's the only thing to do. I know you mentioned the hiring process for you was kind of on the long side, 2 years keeping in touch before actually making a change. How important for our listeners, let's say they think now in any industry in B2B that they are on the same or similar journey. They want to achieve that full potential. I think we share the view that marketing is, in general, in complex B2B, the potential is there. There's huge upside potential for marketing and how it can benefit the business. But if they think now, our listener, that that's something I want to do, I want to capture that full potential. How essential for your experience is the stakeholder buy-in?
It's super important. I think, again, if you want to get the full potential of marketing, that also means you need to change the perception of marketing. When I joined Danelec, marketing was in many ways, a flyer factory. Developing a roll up and a slide deck for the sales team, and then that's it. And one thing is sort of coming in and coming in with a new ambition for marketing. But in order for that ambition to actually materialize, you need others to believe in that potential. So getting the buy-in is absolutely essential. And I think that's a bigger task than just simply putting down your vision for the marketing department and sharing that at your next all hands meeting.
Yeah, definitely. And I like to use the analogy of a brand change. Like if you think it's almost like a branding project, you need to rebrand marketing internally, and it takes time, and you kind of need to live up to that new brand when it's established every day. So it doesn't need anything else than one team member to say yes to that PowerPoint Bureau flyer, if that's not in the brand anymore, to actually kind of go almost backwards in minds of our stakeholders. So I think that's a very good point on that. What would be your 3 tips for our listener now tackling with this problem? How to build that or start the alignment or build up the new role or change the perception if you're working internally?
I think there's different ways in, and I think from my own point of view and the journey we've been on, where we started the journey was with this super important task of repositioning Danelec, and there was very much a branding exercise. So developing a new brand strategy, developing a new visual identity, new overall sort of company narrative, right? And I think that can obviously take you a long way. Aligning the company around different story is an important way forward. But I actually think if you want to sort of get the quickest buy-in, especially in the commercial organization, which is going to be essential, right? I think the fastest way is to align your KPIs with the rest of the commercial organization. So, I think the split between marketing and sales is sort of, we all know that good old narrative, right? But I think the only way to change that is to change the way you are measuring your success. So, if we could go back, I wish we could actually have started there in our journey, because I think, getting there is just essential. And we're in that process as we speak. And I think trying to sort of ensure that you have a marketing function that is serving the commercial targets of your organization. That's the only way that you can actually get the buy-in.
I think that's hugely and super important point. But I think the typical marketing function, or if there's a typical, but I think the biggest challenge is that we see all those SaaS products or the marketing role in SaaS businesses and transactional B2B, that it's leads, marketing influenced pipeline, and marketing is kind of almost in that revenue driver. But for in very complex B2B situations where the sales is the driver of revenue, like de facto, typically, it's hard to find out the role, how can we actually tag along and support the commercial engine that way. So how did you find our role in the commercial setup you have at Danelec?
Again, it's something that we are working hard on as we speak. But getting your collaboration up and running with the rest of the commercial organization needs to be sort of the place to start. What we're working on currently is actually just trying to understand our end-to-end funnel, and this I think is a very typical scenario for many B2B technology companies. Is that there's not a lot of visibility into your funnel. You're not really sure where are the leads actually coming from. Was it the trade show we went to last week? Was it the webinar we did last month? Or was it, a sales guy stumbling over a stone and falling into the hands of a customer? We have no idea. So for me, starting with, taking sort of a data first approach and trying to get your data and your reporting in place. That's sort of the essential first part. If you get that foundation in place, you actually have the visibility into your funnel. You also start to or you will get to a place where you can actually see what is working and what is not. Essentially it comes down to understanding, where do I acquire the cheapest customers? What are the initiatives that might be able to accelerate our sales cycle? It's questions like these that can help us sort of support the commercial organization.
Yeah, and I think for some reason or another, marketing is seeing the support role as a bad role. We are not supporting sales. We want to be something more. But I think in complex industry, sales-driven industries, where it's based on relationships, we already know a majority of our potential customers because we have maybe long history or something. I think that's interesting point you make, like how can we support the commercial engine and commercial engine in that way, and deal velocity, how we capture our clients the cheapest in that sense. Yeah, that's.
I think the only thing that you can do in order to break down this siloed way of working between sales and marketing is, again, you need to realize you're on the same team. We shouldn't have marketing KPIs that is not supporting our sales. We're not in business to do anything else but accelerate our growth, essentially. So we need to realize we are one team, even if we are in an org chart we are divided and there's a separate marketing organization. We're still one team. We still have the same target. We should all start by looking up what are the revenue targets we need to hit, and then try to figure out how do we get there.
Definitely. And I like to use the analogy in the sales, marketing, and business alignment, that are we actually a group of people or are we a team of people? I use the analogy that, are we an Olympic swimming team, where if I'm one swimmer and Asbjørn, you are one swimmer, we might change feedback. We might like, hey, let's go, good job. But we actually don't have any causation between me being successful in my own swim and you being successful in your own swim. Or are we actually an ice hockey team, where I playing defender, now you get to make the goals, you are the forward player, and actually we need to communicate our strategies together. And then we have, of course, the goalkeeper as well, and we all need to be in sync, and we have the same goal, win games. But we need to win games, we need to make goals more than we let goals in. So I think that's a good discussion to think through, that are we working as a group of people, or are we actually working as a team of people for many of our listeners? Because I think that's kind of the starting point, as you mentioned, that we need to be aligned. Even with different accountability, we need to still, in the end, have aligned goals and aligned KPIs. So excellent point. You mentioned the positioning initiative you took at the start of the branding. What's your comment on that? If you think the strategic side, and now taking the backstory of that PowerPoint Bureau stand before you joining, and many in the industrial companies are in the similar position. How's your perspective? Can you use these three strategic, like positioning, segmentation, and differentiation to open the door, or is that too big of a brand difference? Or how you manage that if the role in the start for marketing was that flyers and events, how did you come up and hey, let's talk about positioning or differentiation, or that kind of, like, what's your experience on that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and it's a decision like this. Of course, starts in the management team. I think there are, and you know that as well as I do, there are so many small and medium-sized B2B companies, such as Danelec and so many others, where this is just how we run marketing. And as long as there are no actual marketing resources allocated, I think what I've realized both in my time as a consultant and now joining Danelec is you need that wake up call. You need sort of a resource that can open that door of potential. And if you are a small B2B company like Danelec, if we go back 5-6 years, Danelec was a great business, growing 10% year over year, happy owners, all is good, we're making money. Why should we spend additional cost? Why should we throw cost at this marketing thing, right? So I think ultimately you need to sort of you need some kind of a big change. And for Danelec, of course it was a combination of getting a new ownership structure, Verdane being a fairly large private equity, really with a solid understanding of how to develop a commercial organization and transform a company like Danelec. I think there's definitely been a lot of push coming from Verdane to change the way Danelec was operating as a company, and I think that's one thing. The other thing is, suddenly if you start to use sort of a private equity terminology, if you enter into sort of a buy and build strategy where you acquire companies to grow quickly, then if you actually buy your way into not only new geographical markets, but actual new markets, that requires you to change that perception. So there was sort of the opening for Danelec, and for me a way to articulate why marketing would be an important lever in sort of the overall change for Danelec.
Yeah, and kind of going back to the alignment, the importance of that internal selling for that alignment on the new role of marketing, and the benefits come through that. I think you mentioned the wake-up call, just thinking the saying in any change program that if there's no pain, no change, and no change, no sale. So you can't sell internally if there's no pain involved. So kind of going to that, as you mentioned, business was good, but what needs to happen and what's the pain? It's that the cost of inaction, if we don't do anything, how much we actually lose, whatever the market share or to a competitor or something. So what's your wake-up call? Might be a good question for our listeners to use with their own stakeholders in that sense.
Yeah.
Very good. We have you have mentioned the M&A process from the private equity standpoint. How's that looking from your point of view as a marketing executive?
If we're to go a couple of years back, so I joined shortly after I joined Danelec, we entered into a couple of due diligence processes looking to acquire a couple of companies, and knowing that we sort of the backstory with the acquisition of in Norway just a couple of years before, we were sort of getting to a point where we needed to think about that repositioning. We agreed that we wouldn't be able to get the full potential of our M&A without changing the story of Danelec. So that sort of kickstarted the rebranding that we initiated. When you talk about M&A, there are always two audiences to think about. There's of course the external, the market, your customers, your prospects, and so forth. And then there's the internal side, your team, your employees. In an M&A process, they are certainly not just a team, but there are several teams, and the stories sort of need to be different. One thing is convincing your existing team, why are we adding value by acquiring this company and expanding our footprint? And of course, to the team joining, how will you be gaining from being part of something larger? So there's a lot of dynamics in that. But
different cultures and different way of doing things, and of course the change itself is this. What's the end goal, and the internal communication and integration project in that sense. Yeah. How just to kind of from a marketing team, like from an outside, it almost like someone in the private equity and in the buy side kind of remembers like, oh, actually we have now the two marketing teams. What should we do? And it's almost like an afterthought in that sense, which seems strange to me because in many industries you would actually gain huge competitive advantage for investing more in marketing, and that's sort of so how you see that from a marketing standpoint. What was the topics around marketing? How deep you went to the due diligence on the marketing operations on the company you're gonna buy, or what's your experience on that?
So I think for the two acquisitions we did, the actual team structure and so forth was playing a fairly small part. It wasn't huge companies, these two, but strategically important to the transformation of Danelec. So from a marketing point of view, it was more focused on changing our story and aligning our story to our strategy, which was sort of the big change in this case.
So kind of taking the client focus or customer focused, and what's the story, what value we provide. So that's, and I think just the cases I know, that's probably taking the majority of the marketing and communications bandwidth in any of these, like how we communicate this story and how we don't foray or alienate the customers from the company we buy. We want to kind of promise them same level of service and everything. So makes sense.
Yeah, so I think the focus for Danelec in the rebrand was really trying to, again, looking at both the audiences here, try to see how do we actually change from being this fairly old school production kind of company and culture to something that is more SaaS and software focused. So what we discussed was sort of changing from very much an inside out way of thinking to an outside in, really taking the market focus, the customer focus first. So I think that was sort of the essence of it, and then building our story around that to take that position in the market that we were looking to from a strategic point of view.
On the stakeholder alignment and aligned KPIs you mentioned before, I think the marketing value communication is always big topic, and when looking like any industry event in B2B marketing, there's probably, or tailored to executives, there's some level of value communication or how to prove marketing value, how to show ROI for marketing, any given topics. What's your experience coming from that PowerPoint bureau role in marketing before you joining, and now being really part of the commercial engine and on the strategic level, on the positioning and segmentation and differentiation, how that affects the value communication side of things? Any tips for our listeners?
Yeah, so I think again, if we're to look at sort of the transformation from a marketing point of view in Danelec, we've been through these kind of different stages. The first stage being very sort of brand and positioning focused. Then, we launched our new brand just a bit more than a year ago. But part of that was sort of leaning into the next stage, which has been very focused on sort of building our marketing engine. So in order for us to make that important change and bridge to sales, as we talked about before, it's been super important for us to actually build up something that positions marketing to be more than a flyer factory. So, we have been looking at the way we're working with our CRM. We integrated HubSpot for marketing. We developed our news website in a new CMS that is sort of built for conversion. We initiated a pilot project where we are running demand gen campaigns on LinkedIn to actually start to enrich our marketing engine with data. So again, this is coming back to sort of getting our data in place and getting our reporting in place. And this is sort of the second phase of our transformation, is really getting to a point where we actually understand our funnel and what the funnel looks like. And I think where we are today, we have sort of a solid foundation for our marketing engine in place, where we have a good understanding of our marketing funnel. But what we really need to take the next important step is to get sort of the full funnel transparency, and actually use that transparency to build the bridge between sales and marketing. Because ultimately, the only way where we can start to change the perception of marketing is actually that we bring something valuable to the table.
It's great you mentioned that. We just published Executive Guide, shameless promotion here, but we really dig through and interviewed a couple of clients on what it means to be a more strategic, or have marketing as a more strategic role in the company. It's basically saying that more important. So you need to be way more important to the success of the company to actually be strategic in that sense. So that kind of goes nicely hand in hand with your that. First, you started with the positioning exercise, then kind of living up to that new brand, building the marketing engine, building the data, how we actually take ownership of the marketing part of the buying process, or what we can influence as marketing. And now your focus has shifted to the full funnel transparency and how we actually see the commercial engine working in that sense. What's next?
Well, that's a good question. So it's no secret that Danelec has just been acquired. So 3.5 months into a new ownership structure. So we've been acquired by a French company called GTT, a French listed company specializing in the LNG segment, so liquefied natural gas segment. So we are sort of entering into you could say a new stage of our growth journey, which I'm very certain will be very exciting. So I'm not sure I can say too much about what will happen, other than it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, let's leave it at that, and we can always have a re-record in a year's time. Like then we have the next piece of the puzzle as well in
Happy to
place.
do a debrief a year from now.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think just and of course you mentioned from the start that the difference between working as a consultant and now in-house is the pace. But for me as a consultant, listening in the last 2 years, couple acquisitions, positioning new brand, building the whole marketing engine and marketing function from the ground up with a little bit different role that used to be, and now taking ownership of the full funnel and visibility to full funnel. I think you have had some pace in in that, or I'm almost sweating like, oh, that's a big change.
We'll get right back to the discussion, but first, a quick advertising message from Maven First. We've asked marketing executives this question countless times. Do you think building a more strategic role for your marketing function is important? Most CMOs will raise their hand. Would you raise yours? That's why we created the Executive Guide specifically for you. And the best part, it's completely free. There are no forms to fill out, and you can read it immediately. In this guide, we tackle 4 critical questions to rethink your function. Do you need a more strategic role for your function? What needs to happen to get to a more strategic role? How to evaluate if the change is needed? And what would your more strategic function look like? Access the guide right now. Go to mavenfirst.com/strategic. That's mavenfirst.com/strategic.
As we are now almost at 1 hour mark, we always like to have a couple rapid fire questions. And I have one special one for you, not for anyone else. I have asked this, but let's start with my favorite one. If you would now get your budget, so money and FTEs 3 times what you have now, what would you do and how would you use that? Only rule being that it needs to be sane business investment.
Well, that's a good question. I think a lot of people in my position, there's a lot of talk from CMOs always asking for more budget. But I think actually, and this is honestly speaking, and that might be a little bit annoying to to your question. I think most companies, including my own budget here, I think there are so many ways to get more from our budgets from a marketing point of view. So rather than just 3xing my budget, I would spend quite a bit of that budget to investigate how do we gain more value from our budget.
That's good. So an interesting answer. How to dig a little bit deeper, more with less or more with same. I think that's unfortunately being kind of the standard in the B2B industry in the Nordics for the couple past years. We don't see big shifts in marketing budget. Of course, there's always anomalies and company situation dictating that. But how you do that?
Well, I think in looking at the transformation we are in right now, we've been very much sort of in an experimental phase, trying to sort of explore what are the different levers we have to deliver the most value to our company. And I think what we're actually just discussing currently is trying to double click on the few initiatives where we really see this is where we are delivering value, and then doubling down on those. So instead of having this idea that in order for marketing to deliver value, we need to expand and expand and expand with new channels and new all sorts of things. I think actually you can gain a lot just trying to really understand what are we doing that is working, and then trying to do that a lot better. And I think that's an opportunity. When I talk to some of my peers, this is always a topic. We always have too little budget. And of course, I think we could get further than what we do now if we were able to have more people on the team, if we had more budget, etc. But taking sort of a reality check and actually understanding what are we doing right and how can we do things even more efficiently. I would rather take that approach, and that's usually what or my input when I talk to my peers is, rather than always being sort of on of running with this narrative that marketing is underinvested in B2B. Then try to see how can we do more with what we have, because that is ultimately the only way that you will get more.
Great insight on that. And actually, this is the reason I ask this. This is the first question I ask if I hear that we are under-resourced. Like, if you are under-resourced, show me what can you achieve with 1x or 1.5x, 3x or 5x. If you don't answer that question, you are not under-resourced. So yeah, good insight with that. And just on our data, doing more with the same, I think there's two levers you mentioned. We like operational efficiency side of things. Ad hoc is big in marketing, definitely in traditional PowerPoint bureau side of things. How can we minimize that? Based on this year data, I don't have the exact numbers here, but I think when asked the marketing team members the amount of ad hoc, so not pre-planned work, but something we need to still do, it's ranging from 35 to 55% of the overall things we do. So I think that's one lever maybe. And of course, the saying goes that if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority, as you mentioned. So doubling down on the initiatives you see traction and you see impact. So definitely.
I think that's a good point, and I think I definitely recognize that dynamic. I think it's not possible to run a marketing department and not have ad hoc tasks coming in from many sides, and that's of course that's something we need to deal with, and ultimately I think this is coming back to the discussion we had earlier and sort of aligning our commercial organization around the same targets. If we are one team, we are also solving what needs to be solved together, right? It's a question of placing responsibility and accountability the right places. And that's going to be easier if you play on the same team.
Definitely, and I think it kind of nicely goes back to where we started on the stakeholder alignment and buy-in for the change, because there's very simple way to battle ad hoc: say no, and then that's why you need the alignment from the top. It's okay to say no to that one salesperson, no matter how big the sale is gonna be, when they ask, "Hey, can you do this for me?" It's hugely important for this next day event or next week event. Can you now stop everything and do this for me? It's very easy to battle that ad hoc. Say no. But for that to say no and to your team members and enable your team members to say no, that's you need the alignment where we started, or how you see that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, if we start at a place where we have a shared target and we say, what can I do to help us get there? Then it's going to solve itself. If we from a marketing point of view is to support the rest of the commercial organization in the best way possible, that also requires the rest of the commercial organization to think ahead and to actually, be straight in their answers in how do you support us in the best way possible. And I think that doesn't require a lot of thought to understand that, of course, coming with something ad hoc the day before going on stage or whatever, that's probably not the most efficient.
Yeah, definitely. Another rapid fire question. One tip or advice would you give yourself when starting in your first leader's position, if you could go back?
So from a leadership point of
Yeah.
view, I think essentially the big change coming from sort of a classic route, starting in something that is more operational, the big change from being operational to taking a leadership position is understanding the change of your own role in that change. So trying to find a way where you can actually take yourself out of the operations. And, the tendency is that you want to instantly dive into a challenge and solve that challenge as soon as you realize it's there, right? You go hands-on and you solve stuff instead of enabling your team to solve an issue or a challenge. So I think that's sort of the big change, realizing that you need to take a different position in sort of your team dynamic. I think that's probably the big one, because for once, I think everyone has been working with a senior, just overruling you and micromanaging you and essentially solving your issues. And as a junior, or you're not motivated by, just having someone coming in and solving your issues, and you don't learn anything. So in order to sort of build a team and a team structure that works for you, you need to take that step back and enable your team to actually solve challenges on their own. Of course, you're there as a supporting function, but I think the big recommendation is to stay hands off.
Stay away. And I think it's from Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership, that always remember, if you take the full ownership, there's nothing for your team to take ownership of. So you need to kind of share the ownership to really be a great leader. So some wisdom from the Navy SEALs, if that's applicable. So kind of letting go of the wine in a sense. Trust your team.
Yeah,
that's a good.
Yeah, and it's the only way where you can actually grow beyond your own capabilities, right? If you need to be the one who can sort of solve everything, your own capabilities is the ceiling of where you can take your department. And I think that's, no matter how smart you are, that's not going to be efficient in the long run.
Yeah, you kind of become your own department's biggest bottleneck in a sense.
Exactly.
That's very, very good. Bunch of stuff around M&A, your experience on the role, the full potential, and being big part of the commercial engine at Danelec, or marketing being the big part of commercial engine at Danelec. If our listeners want to find out more about your thoughts, your ideas, or just contact you working with the same situation or anything like that, what's the best way to contact you, Asbjørn?
Everyone is, of course, welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to provide an update here and then on what we're doing from a Danelec point of view, and of course, this is also where we usually share when we have openings to join Danelec, which I will recommend anyone to do.
If you want to be part in a team where the team leader knows that you need to have ownership. So that's a good shout out to all the listeners who are looking for this kind of positions. So LinkedIn handle, we will definitely link that to the show notes.
And then of course our website, danelec.com.
Yeah.
You can follow or read more about the company, read more about what we're doing, and we have a blog that we are usually updating too, with lots of interesting insights into our industry and what we're doing from a Danelec point of view.
Definitely, and you had a cliffhanger at one point that the amount of data you collect. So I was noting down that would be interesting to just see what you do with the data from a marketing point of view. That if you are in a position where all that black box data, and now from the software data, like how you utilize that. But maybe that's a topic for the next episode in a year time or so. In that sense.
Yeah, happy to dive in there. I think there's definitely an episode there.
Yeah, definitely. For our listeners, thank you for listening to this episode. We will come back with the next episode in a couple of weeks of time. When you're listening to this, thanks for listening. And Asbjørn, thank you for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Morning Brew for Marketing Executives. We hope you found today's episode insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps us bring you more stories from marketing leaders. This podcast is produced by Maven First. For more information, please visit mavenfirst.com.